The Wilhelm Gustloff. She was the ultimate Nazi dream ship. She was built to take loyal German workers on the holiday of a lifetime. By 1945, the Gustloff was their last refuge. On the 30th of January, she was hit by Russian torpedoes.
And Mother yelled, "Children, out, out, we've hit a mine."
Thousands are caught below decks.
We're not going to die. I don't want to die.
For the 10,000 people on board, it's a struggle for life and death. A struggle more than 9,000 will lose. The story of the Gustloff had begun 2 weeks earlier, in January 1945. It is the calm before the storm, when it is still possible to hope.
One woman said, "But our Führer won't allow the Russians into our beautiful East Prussia." We hoped right to the end. It was so unimaginable to just leave everything, to just go.
12th of January 1945. The Red Army's assault on East Prussia begins. For the Germans, this battle is already lost, and their generals know it.
If you look at the Eastern Army Group's plans, they had no idea what to do. They had far too little equipment, they had no petrol, they had too few weapons, the soldiers were exhausted, and basically they knew that when the Russians attacked, they would make big operational breakthroughs.
The world's biggest land army is advancing along a 1,500-kilometer front, deep into Germany's East Prussian provinces. They have absolute superiority. And they want revenge.
An eye for an eye, a life for a life. Deep inside, each of us only had that one thought. They couldn't expect sympathy from us. No way, no, no, no. They came to us with a sword, now they will die by the sword.
These are the pictures the Red Army soldiers carry with them. 3 years of German brutality in their Russian homeland. Murder and destruction on a scale never seen before. And unbearable suffering.
Millions and millions of innocent civilians died. They were our people. Our villages and towns were destroyed, along with so much property. Of course, that made us want revenge. It made us want to get our own back.
Now German towns are burning. German civilians dying. The Nazi leadership won't help them leave. These pictures are deceptive. Only a lucky few get their ticket west.
If you wanted to take a train, you needed a special permit. Trains are there to carry guns. You can ride when victory comes. That was written up at every station.
The Nazi in charge of East Prussia is Erich Koch. He refuses to allow civilians to leave. He plays the caring father figure for the cameras. He'll be one of the first to save his own skin.
Most often it was the party leaders who fled first, without giving the order to evacuate. Basically the same thing happened everywhere. The front came closer and closer, and then retreating German army units came past and said, "Get out of here, the Russians are coming." And there were still no orders to evacuate.
Waiting can be fatal. Plenty of families have already packed their wagons with the bare essentials, in spite of the ban. They form up in long caravans of women, children, and old people. All the men are on the front line. Hundreds of thousands take to the long, straight roads of East Prussia. Many of them are on their way to the Wilhelm Gustloff. The refugees have to share the roads to the west with the German army.
The orders were clear. The wagons had to get off the roads. The generals commanding army groups and individual armies passed the order down the line. And those pictures, those terrible pictures of the wagons lying in ditches. It's perfectly possible the Wehrmacht did that. They cracked down hard.
The Red Army are approaching the Baltic, cutting off East Prussia from the rest of Germany. On the 21st of January, the Soviets reached the Baltic port of Elbing, where Naval Auxiliary Ursula Rezas is stationed.
There was a thundering and a thudding, and the door was ripped open, and a soldier stood there shouting, "Move, move, the Russians are here. Their tanks have reached the town."
Ursula Rezas quits Elbing as the Soviets take over. East Prussia is completely cut off. Now there are only two ways to the west: by ship from the port of Pillau near Königsberg, or over the frozen coastal waters of the Huff. Their goal is Gotenhafen. That's where the big ships are waiting. And they know that one of them is the Wilhelm Gustloff. But the ships here are reserved for the army. They have commandeered every freight ship to transport men and equipment so that the war can go on.
This was how a ship's load was allocated. 40% for the wounded, 40% military equipment, 20% refugees. The military had absolute priority. And it wasn't about saving refugees. That was what you might call coincidental. It was improvised. You took refugees along if you happened to have the space.
The Wilhelm Gustloff is the Nazis' dream ship. Since 1940, it's been a floating barracks, a U-boat training school. Now the order has been given to bring its 1,000 U-boat cadets back to Kiel in Western Germany to fight. And to bring refugees too, if there's room. But between the Gustloff and many of the refugees lie the frozen waters of the Huff. And this is the coldest winter in decades.
You kept walking, keep going, faster, keep going. The faster the better. Everyone was scared. Country people were afraid to be driving over the water, over the ice.
Many wagons do fall through the ice. No one stops to help. No one can help. And the Russians have a clear field of fire.
There were more refugees than you could count, and we attacked them from our planes. On the Huff, on the sandbar of the Nerum, close to Königsberg, It was just a massacre. God knows how many people were killed. Tens of thousands of people were crossing the ice. It was impossible to miss them. The Germans got back what they had done to us. That's why they couldn't expect any sympathy from us.
Even today, no one knows how many were killed. Certainly tens of thousands. And the Russian tanks are close behind.
I remember driving right by some of those wagons. I wasn't the least bit interested whether the civilians on them were alive or dead. We had to advance. Forwards, forwards, forwards.
Russian tanks overtake the stragglers on the trek. "17-year-old Hildegard Rauschenbach is one of them.
And that first night, I became acquainted with these people. I said to my mother, "Mama, I don't want to live through another night like that."
Many women could have told the same story.
I hid in the straw, and they started stabbing with pitchforks. And I pretended to be ill, as though I was going to be sick. And then 3 or 4 came in, and one pointed a pistol at me. I said, "Shoot me, shoot me."
The Soviets begin to organize a transport of women to forced labor camps in Siberia. Hildegard Rauschenbach is rounded up.
And then the interpreter said to me, "Officer, ask you, you want to stay with him? Then when soldiers go, you go back to Mama, Papa, or to Siberia?" And without a moment's thought, I answered, "To Siberia."
Hildegard Rauschenbach spent 5 years in a Siberian camp. Today, she feels no bitterness about that time. Königsberg, capital of East Prussia. The Nazis declare it a fortress city. With most of the army gone, teenagers and old men will defend it to the death. German civilians are again forced to make their own decisions, like the family of 12-year-old Jürgen Danol.
Granddad said, "They've made Königsberg a fortress city. Out, out. We have to make sure we get out of here to Pillau, to see if we can get a ship." So we set off. Come on, children, come on.
40 kilometers on foot, 20 degrees below zero.
Anyone who couldn't go on sat down in the ditch beside the road. I saw a few people sitting down a little way back, you know. And you wondered, what are they doing there? They've got to get up, they're already all white. And at some point, God had taken pity on them, and he'd sent this great shroud.
This is the port of Pillau. The last few small boats leave from here to Gotenhafen.
The people were just standing there. Then Mother yelled, "I have 4 children and my father." Then they had to let us on. The others had to stay behind.
It's a freezing overnight trip from Pillau to Gotenhafen. They arrive to find the city spilling over with refugees, most of them desperate to get on the Gustloff. Helmut Engler has been drafted in to help in the chaos.
Gotenhafen had 240,000 inhabitants, and then came 120,000 more. Every one of them, without exception, whether they were children or adults, they all looked at the very end of their tether. It was a hard thing to see.
In this situation, it's the children who are suffering most.
There was a woman standing there with a child, tucked in a pillow. I can still see it quite clearly. She was holding the pillow around the child. The child was dead, but the woman didn't see that. She kept looking at this child. It was dead, but she held it in her arms. It was her child.
To the waiting people, the Wilhelm Gustloff